Chapter 1. Blood on white snow. Snow fell in silent curtains, blanketing the forest in a cold so deep it seemed to reach into Marlowe's bones and wrap around her heart. She stumbled forward, one foot dragging behind the other, leaving a dark trail of crimson drops that disappeared almost instantly beneath fresh powder, just a little farther. She told herself, though she had no idea where she was going or what she'd find away. That's all that mattered. Away from the wedding venue where she'd been left standing like a fool in her white dress. Away from the sympathetic stares and whispered gossip. Away from Garrett's apologetic text message explaining he couldn't marry her because he'd reconnected with his ex. The dress was gone now, torn off somewhere in the first desperate hours of running. She wore only the thin slip underneath and a borrowed coat she'd grabbed from a guest's car. Not nearly enough against the mountain cold. Her vision blurred. The trees swayed like drunken giants. She didn't see the slope until her foot found nothing but air. The world tilted, and Marlowe tumbled down an embankment, branches clawing at her exposed skin, rocks punishing her already bruised body. When she finally stopped rolling, she lay face down in the snow, tasting copper and ice. Pain radiated from her side where she'd hit something sharp on the way down. When she pressed her hand against the wound, it came away slick and dark. This is how it ends, she thought distantly. Not at the altar. Not in some romantic tragedy. Just ... Bleeding out in the middle of nowhere because I was too proud to stay and face the humiliation. The cold was seductive now, promising rest. Her eyes drifted closed. Then she heard it, a low, rumbling growl that vibrated through the earth itself. Marlowe's eyes snapped open. Through the veil of falling snow, she saw a shadow moving between the trees, massive, four-legged, eyes that caught the moonlight and reflected it back like molten gold. A wolf, but no wolf should be that large. No wolf should move with that kind of deliberate intelligence, head lowered, watching her with an intensity that felt almost ... human. She should have been terrified. Maybe she was too far gone for fear. Or maybe some part of her welcomed this and quick and wild, instead of slow and frozen. Either way, she didn't scream when the creature approached. It moved closer, snow crunching under massive paws. Marlowe could smell it now, earth and pine and something else, something wild and clean that cut through the metallic scent of her own blood. The wolf circled her once, then twice, that golden gaze never leaving her face. "Go ahead," she whispered, her voice cracking. I'm not going to fight you." The wolf stopped. Its ears pricked forward. Then, impossibly, it sat. They stared at each other across 3 feet of bloodstained snow. Marlowe's mind struggled to make sense of what she was seeing. The animal was huge, easily the size of a bear, with fur so dark it was almost black, except where the moonlight caught silver undertones. But it was the eyes that held her. Ancient eyes. Knowing eyes. "What are you?" She breathed out. The wolf's head tilted, almost like it was considering the question. Then, before Marlowe could process what was happening, the creature moved. Not to attack, to close the distance between them. It lowered its enormous head and pressed its muzzle gently against her injured side, breathing warm air across the wound. Marlowe gasped at the contact, but not from pain. Heat bloomed from where the wolf touched her, spreading through her body like summer sunlight, chasing away the lethal cold. The animal made a sound, not quite a whine, not quite a rumble, and nudged her with surprising tenderness. "I don't understand," she said, though her words were slurring now. Blood loss and hypothermia were dragging her down into darkness. Why aren't you? Double quotes. The wolf moved again, positioning itself alongside her body. Then, with careful precision, it caught the back of her coat in its teeth and began to pull. Marlowe felt herself being dragged across the snow. She wanted to protest, to question, but exhaustion crashed over her in waves. The last thing she registered before consciousness slipped away was the sensation of being lifted, not in jaws, but in arms, and the impossible impression of a man's voice, rough and desperate, saying, "Don't you dare die on me, little rabbit. Not here." Not like this. When Marlowe woke, she was warm. That was the first miracle. The second was that she was waking at all. She lay on something soft, a bed, she realized covered in heavy furs and blankets. A fire crackled somewhere nearby, casting dancing shadows across rough wooden walls. The air smelled like smoke and cedar and that same wild, clean scent from the forest. Marlowe tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through her side, sharp enough to make her gasp and fall back against the pillows. "Don't move," the voice came from the shadows near the fire, deep, commanding, edged. With something that might have been concern, a man stepped into the light, and Marlowe's breath caught. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a powerful build barely contained by a simple black shirt. Dark hair fell past his collar, slightly damp, as if he'd recently bathed. But it was his face that arrested her. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and eyes the color of whiskey and gold that watched her with unnerving intensity. Eyes she'd seen before, glowing in the darkness. "You," she whispered. "You were the Wolf." His expression didn't change, but something flickered in those golden eyes. "You're delirious. You lost a lot of blood." "I know what I saw." "You saw a Wolf in the forest," he said calmly, moving closer to the bed. "I found you after it left." "You're lucky I was hunting nearby." Marlowe studied him, her mind sharp despite the pain medication he must have given her. Everything about him was carefully controlled: his posture, his expression, his tone, but she could see the tension coiled beneath the surface, like a predator forcing itself to appear harmless. "What's your name?" she asked. He hesitated, as if even that simple question required weighing risks. Finally, "Kael." "Kael," she repeated, tasting the name. It fit him somehow, sharp and strong and slightly dangerous. "I'm Marlowe." "I know. Your ID was in your coat pocket." He gestured toward a chair where her things were laid out, along with a crushed bouquet and wedding rings. He'd flooded Marlowe's cheeks, of course. The evidence of her humiliation laid bare. "I don't want to talk about that," she said quietly. Neither do I." Kael crossed his arms, his gaze sweeping over her with clinical assessment. "You had a deep laceration and stage to hypothermia. I cleaned and stitched the wound. You'll need to stay off your feet for at least a few days. Stay here. With you. Unless you'd rather I take you back to town and let everyone see the runaway bride who nearly died in the woods." His tone was matter of fact. But Marlowe caught the underlying challenge. She looked away, studying the cabin's interior to avoid his knowing gaze. It was small but well built, with one main room that served as kitchen and living space, and what looked like a bedroom and bathroom beyond, isolated, private, exactly the kind of place someone would choose if they had secrets to keep. "How far are we from town?" she asked. "Far enough." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting tonight." Kael moved toward the door, clearly ending the conversation. "I'll bring you something to eat. Then you need to rest." "Wait." He paused, hand on the doorframe, not turning around. "Thank you," Marlowe said softly, "for saving my life." "Whatever you are." His shoulders tensed. For a long moment, he stood perfectly still. And Marlowe had the strangest sense of being hunted, assessed, and measured by something wearing a man's skin. When Kael finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Get some rest, Marlowe. Tomorrow, we'll talk about what happens next." Then he was gone, leaving her alone with the crackling fire and the certainty that she just stepped into a story far stranger than a failed wedding. Chapter 2. The Man Who Moves Like Wolves. Word count. Approximately 1,100. Marlowe woke to the sound of an axe splitting wood. The rhythmic thunk, thunk, thunk filtered through the cabin walls, steady as a heartbeat. Morning light slanted through the window, turning dust motes into gold. She lay still for a moment, taking inventory of her body. The pain in her side had dulled to a persistent ache, and the fog in her head had lifted enough for reality to settle in with uncomfortable clarity. She was alive. She was in a stranger's cabin, and that stranger had eyes like the Wolf that had saved her. Impossible, the rational part of her mind insisted. Wolves don't turn into men. You were dying. You imagined it, but the rest of her, the part that had felt his breath against her wound, that had been lifted in arms instead of just, knew better. The chopping stopped. Marlowe pushed herself up carefully, testing her limits. The stitches pulled but held. Someone had dressed her in an oversized flannel shirt that smelled like cedar and something else that wild. Clean scent she was beginning to associate with Kael. Her ruined slip and coat were gone. Probably thrown away. The cabin door opened, and Kael entered carrying an armload of firewood. He'd stripped down to a thermal shirt despite the cold, and Marlowe couldn't help but notice the way it clung to his frame. Everything about him was lean muscle and controlled power. Like a blade wrapped in flesh, he noticed her sitting up and paused mid-step. "You should be resting." "I've rested enough." Marlowe swung her legs over the side of the bed, fighting a wave of dizziness. "How long was I asleep?" 14 hours. Kael dumped the wood by the fireplace and moved to the kitchen area, putting distance between them. "Your body needed it." 14. She blinked. "What time is it?" Just past noon. Marlowe's hand went to her side instinctively, feeling the bandage beneath the shirt. Professional work. Clean, tight stitches. "Are you a doctor?" "No, but you know how to do field medicine." "I know a lot of things." Kael filled a kettle with water and set it on an old-fashioned wood stove. His movements were efficient, practiced. "Comes with living alone in the mountains." "How long have you lived here?" "Long enough." Marlowe studied his profile, the sharp line of his jaw, the way his dark hair caught copper highlights in the firelight. He was beautiful in a dangerous sort of way, like winter itself given form. And he was deflecting every question she asked. "You're not very good at conversation, are you?" She said that earned her the ghost of a smile. "I don't get much practice." "Why not?" The smile vanished. "Because I choose not to." The kettle began to whistle. Kael poured hot water into 2 mugs, adding what looked like dried herbs to each. He brought one to Marlowe, keeping carefully out of reach as he set it on the small table beside the bed. "Willow bark and chamomile," he explained. "For the pain and inflammation." Marlowe wrapped her hands around the mug, grateful for the warmth. "You know, most people who rescue someone don't act like they regret it afterward." Kael's jaw tightened. "I don't regret saving your life." "Then what do you regret?" He turned away, moving to the window. For a long moment, he just stood there, staring out at the snow-covered forest. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "Complications. I'm a complication. You're human." He said it like that explained everything. The words sent a chill down Marlowe's spine that had nothing to do with the cold. "And you're not." Kael's shoulders went rigid. The air in the cabin seemed to thicken, charged with sudden tension. When he looked back at her, his eyes caught the light, strangely amber and gold, and definitely not human. "Drink your tea," he said quietly. "Before it gets cold." "I'm not afraid of you." Marlowe heard the words leave her mouth and realized they were true. She should be terrified alone in the wilderness with a man who might not be a man at all. But all she felt was a strange, pulling curiosity. "Whatever you are, you saved me. You could have left me to die, but you didn't." "Maybe I should have, but you didn't," she pressed. "Why?" Kael closed his eyes, and for the first time, she saw cracks in his careful control. "Because you were bleeding out in the snow, and he stopped himself, jaw clenching. "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me." "Why?" His eyes snapped open, pinning her with that unnerving golden gaze. "Why do you care?" "You don't know me. You don't know what I am or what I'm capable of." "No," Marlowe agreed, holding his stare. "But I know you carried me here. I know you stitched me up and kept me warm and made sure I didn't die. That tells me more than any answer you're refusing to give." Something shifted in Kael's expression, surprise, maybe, or something deeper. He moved closer, and Marlowe found herself acutely aware of his presence. The way he moved was too fluid, too graceful, predatory, beautiful. "You should be asking how to get home," he said, voice low. "Not interrogating your host." "Maybe I don't want to go home." The admission surprised them both. Marlowe looked down at her tea, embarrassed by her own honesty. "There's nothing waiting for me there except humiliation and questions. I don't want to answer." Running away doesn't solve anything, says the man hiding in a cabin in the middle of Nowhere, Kael's laugh was bitter. Fair point, silence settled between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Outside, wind whispered through the pines. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the distance, a bird called out, or maybe it was something else. Something wilder. "Can I ask you something?" Marlowe said finally. "And will you actually answer?" "Depends on the question. Do you live here alone because you want to, or because you have to?" Kael's expression shuddered immediately. "That's not the simple question you think it is. I know." Marlowe sipped her tea, letting the herbs soothe the rawness in her throat. "But I'm going to be stuck here for a few days anyway. We might as well be honest with each other. Honesty is dangerous. More dangerous than lying. In my world." Yes, my world. Not our world. The distinction wasn't lost on Marlowe. Kael turned back to the window, shoulders tense. When he spoke again, his voice was carefully neutral. "I live here because it's safer. For me and for others. Safer from what? From what I become when I'm not careful." He glanced over his shoulder, and Marlowe saw something fierce and haunted in his eyes. "From the monster everyone sees when they look at someone like me," the confession hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Marlowe's heart kicked against her ribs, not from fear, but from something else entirely. Recognition, maybe. She'd spent years being exactly who everyone expected her to be. The good daughter, the perfect fiancé, the woman who smiled and nodded and never made waves. And where had it gotten her? Abandoned in a wedding dress and nearly dead in the snow. Maybe monsters weren't the worst thing you could be. Maybe the worst thing was being so tame that people felt comfortable throwing you away. "I don't see a monster," she said quietly. Kael turned fully to face her. Something dangerous flickering in his expression. "That's because you haven't seen all of me yet." "Then show me." "No, why not?" Because he stopped, jaw working as if fighting with himself. Finally, he let out a long breath. "Because some doors, once opened, can't be closed again. And you deserve the chance to walk away from this from me without that weight." Marlowe set down her tea and stood, ignoring the pull of her stitches. Kael stiffened as she approached, but he didn't back away. Up close, she could see the flecks of amber in his eyes, the barely contained tension in every line of his body. "What if I don't want to walk away?" she asked. "You say that now. You don't know what you're asking." "Then tell me." Marlowe held his gaze, refusing to flinch. "Tell me what you are, Kael. Let me decide for myself what I can handle." For a heartbeat, she thought he might. She saw the war playing out across his face, the desperate need to be seen, to be known. Warring against years of isolation and self-imposed exile. Then he stepped back. Breaking the moment, "You need more rest," he said, his tone once again carefully controlled. "And I need to check your stitches before infection sets in." It was a dismissal, and they both knew it. But as Marlowe returned to the bed, she caught something in Kael's expression, a fleeting look of longing so intense it made her chest ache. Whatever secret he was keeping, it was killing him to keep it, and somehow that made her want to stay even more. Chapter 3. Scars and Secrets. Be the third day. Marlowe had mapped every inch of the cabin. It wasn't much. One main room with a kitchen area, a small bathroom with a clawfoot tub that looked older than she was, and the bedroom where she'd been sleeping while Kael took the couch. But it was the details that told his story. The bookshelves crammed with worn paperbacks and leather-bound journals, the collection of hand-carved wooden figures lined up on the windowsill, the sketches pinned to the walls, all of them depicting the forest in various seasons, rendered in charcoal with an artist's careful eye. No photographs, no personal mementos, nothing that connected him to any life before this cabin. It was as if Kael had deliberately erased himself from the world. She was examining one of the sketches, a massive pine tree with roots that seemed to dig into the paper itself. When the door opened, Kael entered with fresh snow dusting his shoulders, carrying two rabbits he'd clearly hunted. "You're supposed to be resting," he said, though there was less bite to it than before. "I've been resting for 3 days. I'm going stir crazy." Marlowe gestured to the drawing. "You made this." Kael hung the rabbits near the door and shrugged out of his coat. It passes the time. It's beautiful. You're talented. It's just lines on paper. No, Marlowe said firmly, turning to face him. It's more than that. You can see the life in it, the way the branches move, the texture of the bark. This tree means something to you. Kael's expression flickered with something unreadable. It's where I first shifted. The confession slipped out before he could stop it. Marlowe saw the immediate regret flash across his face, saw him mentally scrambling to take it back, shifted. She repeated softly. You mean ... changed. Kael's jaw clenched. He moved to the kitchen counter, putting his back to her as he began preparing the rabbits with practiced efficiency. Forget I said anything. I can't just forget it. Kael, you finally gave me a piece of the truth. A piece you shouldn't have. Marlowe approached slowly, careful not to spook him. How old were you? When it first happened, silence. The knife in his hand stilled against the cutting board. 13. He finally said, voice rough. I thought I was dying. Thought something was tearing me apart from the inside. My bones breaking and reshaping, my skin burning like it was on fire. He set down the knife with deliberate care. I ran into the forest because I didn't want my family to see. Didn't want them to watch me become whatever I was turning into, but you survived. Survived? His laugh was hollow. That's one word for it. Marlowe's chest tightened at the pain in his voice. What happened to your family? They're gone. Not dead dashed, just ... gone. From my life. Kael turned to face her, and the rawness in his eyes made her breath catch. My father couldn't look at me anymore. My mother cried every time I walked into a room. My younger sister, his voice cracked. She was afraid of me. This tiny girl who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms, and suddenly she couldn't stand to be alone with me. Kael, so I left. 16 years old, and I packed a bag and walked away. Figured they'd be better off thinking I was dead than living with a monster in their house. The words hung in the air, heavy with years of accumulated grief. Marlowe wanted to reach for him, to offer comfort, but something in his posture warned her not to. He was holding himself together by sheer force of will, and one touch might shatter him completely. You're not a monster, she said instead. You keep saying that. You don't know. I know you've been nothing but kind to me. I know you saved my life when you could have walked away. I know you're in pain, and you've been carrying it alone for too long. Marlowe took a deliberate step closer. Whatever you think you are, whatever happened with your family, it doesn't change the fact that you're still human enough to care. Human enough. Kael's voice turned sharp. I'm not human, Marlowe. Not anymore. Not when the moon is full and the wolf takes over. Not when I can smell fear from a mile away or hear your heartbeat from across the room. His eyes flashed cold. Not when every instinct in my body is screaming at me to claim you, to mark you, to keep you here where you're safe and mine. The confession shocked them both into silence. Marlowe's heart hammered against her ribs, not from fear, but from the raw intensity of his words. Claim me? Kael looked away, jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping. Forget I said that. You keep telling me to forget things. I'm not good at it. Well, try harder. He turned back to the counter, movements sharp with agitation. You don't understand what you're asking for. What being around me means. Then explain it to me. Marlowe moved closer, emboldened by something she couldn't quite name. Stop pushing me away and just talk to me, please. Kael's hands gripped the edge of the counter, knuckles white. For a long moment, he just stood there, shoulders tense with internal struggle. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Wolves mate for life. It's not a choice, it's biology. Instinct, fate, if you believe in that sort of thing. He exhaled shakily. From the moment I caught your scent in the forest, something in me recognized you. Claimed you. And every second you're here, that bond gets stronger. More dangerous. Dangerous how? Because I'm territorial, possessive. Because the wolf doesn't understand concepts like consent or free will, it just knows you're mine to protect, mine to keep. His voice dropped lower, rougher. And the man isn't doing much better at resisting. Heat flooded Marlowe's cheeks. She should be terrified by this admission, should be planning her escape. Instead, all she felt was a strange, answering pull in her chest, like something in her recognized him too. What if I don't want you to resist? The words escaped before she could stop them. Kael spun around, eyes blazing. Don't say things like that. Why not? Because it's inconvenient. Because it complicates your self-imposed isolation. Marlowe lifted her chin, refusing to back down. You think you're the only one who's been broken and thrown away. I spent 3 years planning a future with someone who couldn't even break up with me face to face. I gave up parts of myself trying to be what he wanted, and it still wasn't enough. That's different, is it? You're hiding from people who might reject you. I was rejected by someone I thought I knew. She took another step closer. Maybe we're both just scared of being hurt again. Kael stared at her, something fierce and vulnerable warring in his expression. You should be scared of me. Not rejection, but I'm not, and it was true. Standing here in this cabin with a man who just admitted to being a werewolf, who'd confessed to feeling possessive and territorial toward her, she felt safer than she had in years. Maybe that makes me crazy. Maybe I'm still processing trauma and not thinking clearly. But I'm tired of running from things that scare me. I want to stop being afraid. Marlowe, show me. She held his gaze, steady despite her racing heart. You keep saying I haven't seen all of you. So show me. Let me decide for myself what I can handle. It's not that simple. Why not? Because once you see, once you know, there's no going back. His voice was raw with emotion. And I won't be able to let you leave. The Wolf won't allow it. I barely have control as it is. Marlowe's breath caught at the admission. She should run. Should demand he take her back to civilization immediately. Instead, she found herself asking, what if I don't want to leave? The words hung between them, loaded with possibility. Kael's control visibly cracked. She saw it in the way his hands trembled, the way his breathing turned ragged, the way his eyes burned with barely restrained hunger. You don't know what you're saying, he managed. Then help me understand, for a moment. She thought he might close the distance between them. Thought he might kiss her or push her away or finally let the mask drop completely. The air crackled with tension, thick enough to taste. Then, deliberately, Kael stepped back. The full moon is in 2 days, he said quietly. If you want to see what I really am, stay until then. But after that, you have to decide. Stay knowing the truth, or let me take you back to your life and forget any of this happened. And if I choose to stay. His eyes met hers, burning with intensity. Then you're mine. Little rabbit, completely, and there's no walking away from that. The shiver ran through Marlowe, part fear, part anticipation, part something else entirely. 2 days, she agreed. Kael nodded once, then turned away, leaving Marlowe alone with her racing thoughts and the growing certainty that she just agreed to something that would change her life forever. Chapter 4. The Weight of the Moon. Next morning, Marlowe woke to find Kael already gone. A note on the kitchen table, written in sharp, angular handwriting, gone hunting. Don't leave the cabin. Back by noon, she crumpled the paper in her fist, irritation flaring hot in her chest. After last night's charged conversation, after she'd laid herself bare and he'd admitted to feeling a primal claim on her, he'd retreated again. Running to the woods like he always did when things got too real. But as the morning wore on and Marlowe's anger cooled, she began to notice the small things. The way he'd left the fire banked perfectly to keep her warm. The fresh water in the pitcher by her bed. The jar of honey he'd set out next to the tea tin. He must have noticed he added extra to hers. Kael was taking care of her even in absence. She was examining his bookshelf, an eclectic mix of survival guides, poetry, and mythology, when something caught her eye. A leather journal, older than the others, wedged between 2 volumes. Marlowe hesitated, knowing she shouldn't pry. But curiosity won out. The pages were filled with Kael's handwriting, younger and less controlled than his current script. Dates going back 12 years. She flipped to a random entry, March 15th. Another full moon survived. I thought it would get easier, but it doesn't. The wolf wants to run back to them, to make them understand. But how do you explain yourself to people who look at you like you're a nightmare? Mom called again. I didn't answer. It's better this way, safer. Marlowe's throat tightened. She turned more pages, each entry revealing pieces of the lonely, frightened boy Kael had been. June 2nd. Met another shifter today. Older, part of a pack. He said I should join them, that living alone was dangerous and natural for our kind. But I've seen what packs do: the politics, the hierarchy, the violence. I'd rather be alone than become what they are. October 30th. Sometimes I wonder if my father was right. If it would have been better if I'd never been born. If this curse had died with whatever ancestor first. The entry stopped mid-sentence, the rest of the page torn out. Find anything interesting. Marlowe jumped, spinning to find Kael standing in the doorway. Snow dusted his shoulders, and he carried a string of fish. His expression was unreadable, but tension radiated from every line of his body. I'm sorry, she said quickly, closing the journal. I shouldn't have. No, you shouldn't have. He set down the fish with careful control. But since you did, might as well ask whatever questions you have. Better than you forming your own conclusions. Marlowe studied his face, seeing the hurt beneath the anger. You thought it would get easier. The shifting, but it didn't. No. Kael moved to the sink, washing his hands with deliberate focus. Every month, it's like dying and being reborn. The first few years, I'd wake up miles from the cabin with no memory of what the wolf had done. Terrified I'd hurt someone, but you never did, not people. But I've killed. His voice was flat. Deer, rabbits, once a bear that wandered too close during a shift. The wolf is a predator. Marlowe? It doesn't understand morality or restraint. It just is. That's not all you are, though. Kael's hands stilled in the water. Isn't it? When the moon is full, the man disappears. There's only the wolf. But the wolf saved me. Marlowe moved closer, drawn by the pain in his voice. That night in the forest you could have just run past. You chose to help. The wolf recognized you. Knew you were. He stopped, jaw clenching. Yours. She finished softly. His shoulders tensed. I shouldn't have said that. You can't take it back now. Marlowe leaned against the counter, close enough to see the gold flecks in his eyes. This mate bond thing, how does it work? You really want to know? I asked, didn't I? Kael dried his hands, his movements slow and deliberate. When he finally spoke, he didn't look at her. It's not romantic like human stories make it sound. It's chemical, biological. The wolf recognizes something in your scent compatibility on a genetic level. It decides you're the perfect mate for survival, for producing strong offspring. His voice roughened. And once it decides, there's no undeciding. You're branded in its mind. In my mind, forever. That sounds lonely. Having no choice. It is. Kael finally met her eyes, and the raw honesty there made her chest ache. Most shifters find their mates within their packs. They grow up knowing it could happen, preparing for it. But I'd been alone for so long, I convinced myself it would never happen. That I'd die in these woods without ever feeling that bond. And then I stumbled into your territory, half dead and bleeding. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. The wolf wanted to protect you immediately. The man wanted to run the other direction. Which side won? Neither. I carried you home and spent 3 days at war with myself. He turned to face her fully, expression intense. Do you understand what you're asking me to show you tomorrow night? It's not just a transformation. It's giving you the power to destroy me. Marlowe frowned. How would I destroy you? By seeing the wolf and being afraid. By looking at me the way my family did, like I'm something diseased. Something wrong. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. I've survived 12 years alone because I didn't let anyone close enough to reject me. But you're already under my skin, little rabbit. If you run tomorrow night, it might actually break me. The vulnerability in his confession stole her breath. This fierce, guarded man was handing her his heart and asking her not to crush it. I won't run, she said. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Marlowe reached out, placing her hand over his where it gripped the counter. His skin was warm, slightly rough, completely human despite everything he told her. I've spent my whole life running from difficult things, from confrontation, from my own desires, from anything that might make people uncomfortable. And where did it get me? Abandoned and bleeding in the snow. Kael's fingers twitched under hers but didn't pull away. I'm tired of being afraid, she continued. Tired of making myself small to fit into other people's expectations. Maybe that's why I'm not scared of you, because you're the first honest thing I've encountered in years. You told me exactly what you are and what you want. No games. No lies. Honesty doesn't make me safe. Maybe I don't want safe anymore. The words hung between them, charged with meaning. Kael stared at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve, dangerous and fascinating in equal measure. You should want safe, he said roughly. You should want a normal life with a normal man who can give you everything I can't. Stability, community, a future that doesn't involve hiding in the woods. I had all that with Garrett. It was suffocating. Marlowe squeezed his hand gently. Maybe what I need isn't normal. Maybe it's real. And you think this is real. We barely know each other. I know you saved my life. I know you've been alone for 12 years because you're terrified of hurting people. I know you draw the forest because it's the only place you feel like yourself. She paused. I know you're trying to push me away because you're scared I'll leave anyway. So you want to be the one who controls it. Kael's facade cracked. She saw it in the way his breath hitched, the way his eyes shone with something that might have been tears. Don't what? Don't see me. Don't understand me. It makes this so much harder. Good. Marlowe lifted her other hand to his cheek, feeling the rough stubble beneath her palm. Easy things haven't worked out well for me. For a heartbeat, Kael just stood there, frozen under her touch. Then, slowly, he leaned into her hand like a man starved for contact. His eyes drifted closed, and Marlowe felt the tremor that ran through him, restraint warring with need. Tomorrow night, he said hoarsely, when you see the wolf, promise me something. What? Promise you'll trust your instincts. If you're afraid, truly afraid, you'll tell me. You won't stay out of pity or misplaced compassion. I promise. Marlowe stroked her thumb across his cheekbone. But I already know what my instincts are telling me. His eyes opened, burning gold. What? That I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Kael made a sound low in his throat, half groan, half surrender. Then, before Marlowe could process what was happening, he pulled her against him. Not roughly, but with an urgency that spoke of months, years of denied contact. His arms wrapped around her, careful of her healing side. And Marlowe felt the tremor in his muscles as he held her. You're going to ruin me, he whispered against her hair. Marlowe pressed her face into his chest, breathing in his scent cedar and snow and wild things. Maybe we'll ruin each other. Maybe we will. They stood like that for a long moment, two broken people holding each other together in a cabin at the edge of the world. Outside, the sky darkened with approaching storm clouds. Tomorrow night, the moon would rise full and bright, and everything would change. Chapter 5. The Day Before Word Count. Approximately 1,100 the day of the full moon dawned gray and heavy within snow. Marlowe woke to find Kael already up, pacing the cabin like a caged animal. He'd barely slept. She'd heard him moving around all night, restless and agitated. Now, in the pale morning light, she could see the tension etched into every line of his body. You should eat something, she said, sitting up carefully. Her side still ached, but the wound was healing cleanly, not hungry. His voice was clipped, distracted. He moved to the window, staring out at the forest with an intensity that made her uneasy. Kael, I need you to listen very carefully. He turned to face her. And Marlowe's breath caught at what she saw in his eyes, fear raw and undisguised. Tonight, when it starts, you need to stay inside. Lock the door. Don't come out no matter what you hear. I thought I was going to see you. You will. But not during the shift itself. It's violent, Marlowe, painful. I don't want you to witness that part. He crossed the room in 3 swift strides, kneeling beside the bed. After it's done, after the wolf has fully emerged, I'll come to the window. You can see me then. Decide then. Marlowe reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. And if I want to come outside? Don't. The word was sharp, almost desperate. The wolf knows your scent, recognizes the bond, but it's still unpredictable, especially during the first shift of the season. I won't forgive myself if I hurt you. You won't. You don't know that. I don't know that. Kael's grip tightened. Promise me you'll stay inside, please. The plea in his voice broke something in her chest. I promise. He exhaled shakily, pressing his forehead against their joined hands. I've never done this before. Let someone see. I don't know if I can bear it if you. I'm not going anywhere. Marlowe used her free hand to tilt his face up, meeting his tortured gaze. Whatever happens tonight, whatever I see, I'm staying right here. Understand? Kael stared at her like he was trying to memorize every detail of her face. Then, slowly, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to her forehead, a gesture so tender. It made her throat tight. I don't deserve you, he murmured. Against her skin. Good thing it's not about deserving. A sound escaped him, half laugh, half sob. He pulled back, standing abruptly as if the contact had become too much. I need to prepare some things. Make sure the cabin is secure. Can I help? No, just, he paused at the door, looking back at her. Just stay close. Let me know you're here while I still can. Then he was gone, leaving Marlowe alone with her racing thoughts. The hours crawled by with excruciating slowness. Kael moved through the cabin like a ghost, checking windows, reinforcing the door, setting out supplies with mechanical precision. But Marlowe noticed the small things. The way his hands trembled slightly when he thought she wasn't looking. The way he kept touching things, the table, the bookshelf, her shoulder as he passed like he was grounding himself in the physical world. Tell me about the first time, she said as afternoon light began to fade. When you shifted. What happened after? Kael looked up from where he was stoking the fire. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sat back on his heels, staring into the flames. I woke up naked in the forest, 10 miles from home, covered in blood not mine. There was a deer carcass nearby, torn apart. His voice was distant, remembering. I threw up until there was nothing left. Scrubbed myself in an icy stream until my skin was raw. But I could still smell it, still feel the wolf inside me. Satisfied, proud of the kill. How did you get home? Stole clothes from someone's clothesline. Walked back in the dark, terrified of what I'd find. Convinced I'd killed a person, not an animal. He laughed bitterly. My mother was waiting up. She took one look at me and knew something had changed. Mothers always know. What did she say? Nothing at first. Just pulled me inside, ran a bath, made me sit there until the water went cold. Kael's jaw tightened. Then she asked me what I was. Not what happened, what I was. Like I'd become something other than her son overnight. Marlowe moved to sit beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. Maybe she was just scared. She was. They all were. And I couldn't blame them because I was scared too. He turned to look at her, eyes haunted. That's what you need to understand about tomorrow. It's not just about the wolf. It's about becoming something people can't accept. Something that doesn't fit in their world. Then maybe I don't fit in their world either. Marlowe, I'm serious. She shifted to face him fully. You keep acting like I'm going to run the moment things get difficult. But you're not the only one who's been pretending to be something you're not. I spent years being the perfect daughter, the agreeable girlfriend, the woman who never made anyone uncomfortable. And it nearly destroyed me. That's different, is it? You hide what you are. I hid who I was. Both of us terrified of rejection, both of us alone. She took his hand, feeling the calluses on his palm. Maybe we found each other because we needed to stop pretending. Kael's expression cracked, vulnerability flooding through. What if the wolf isn't what you're expecting? What if it's worse than you imagined? What if it's not? You can't know, neither can you. Marlowe squeezed his hand. You've spent 12 years convinced you're a monster. But from everything you've told me, You've never hurt anyone. You've isolated yourself, lived in constant fear, all to protect people from something that might not even happen. The potential is enough. No, it's not. Potential isn't the same as action. She moved closer, forcing him to hold her gaze. You saved my life, Kael. The wolf could have walked past, could have let me die, but it didn't. That means something. It means the bond. It means you're not the monster you think you are. The words hit him like a physical blow. Marlowe watched emotions flicker across his face too quickly to name hope and fear and desperate longing all tangled together. I want to believe that, he said hoarsely. You have no idea how much I want to believe that. Then believe it. Believe me. Kael pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her with a fierceness that spoke of years of denied contact. Marlowe felt his heart hammering against her cheek, felt the tremor in his muscles as he held her. When the moon rises, he murmured into her hair, you're going to hear things. Sounds that don't seem human. The shift is. It's not quiet. I can handle it. And after, when you see the waltz, if you're afraid, if you want me to stay away, just close the curtains. I'll understand. I'll keep my distance until morning. Marlowe pulled back enough to look at him. And if I'm not afraid, if I want to see you closer. His eyes flashed cold. Don't play with fire, little rabbit. Who says I'm playing? The air between them crackled with tension. Kael's gaze dropped to her lips, and Marlowe felt the heat of his focus like a physical touch. For a heartbeat, she thought he might truly kiss her. Not just a gentle brush of lips against her forehead. Instead, he stood abruptly, putting distance between them. It's almost sunset, he said, voice rough. I need to go. Need to be far enough from the cabin when it starts. Marlowe stood as well, fighting the urge to reach for him. How long does it take? The shift? 20 minutes, maybe 30. Feels like hours. He grabbed a heavy coat from the hook by the door. Remember, stay inside. Lock the door. Don't come out until you see the wolf at the window. I remember. Kael paused at the threshold, hand on the doorframe. The last rays of sunlight caught his profile, turning him into something between man and myth. Marlowe? Yes, thank you. He glanced back, and the vulnerability in his eyes made her chest ache. For staying. For trying to understand. No one's ever ... He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Go, Marlowe said softly. I'll be here when you get back. Kael nodded once, then stepped out into the gathering darkness. Marlowe watched through the window as he walked toward the tree line, his form growing smaller with each step until the forest swallowed him whole. The cabin felt suddenly very empty. Very quiet. Marlowe moved through the space, lighting candles, stoking the fire, trying to distract herself from the anxiety building in her chest. Outside, the sun sank below the horizon, and the first stars began to appear. Then, carried on the wind, she heard it. A how long and mournful and utterly inhuman. The sound of something wild and in pain, calling out to the moon, calling out to her. Marlowe pressed her hand against the window, her heart racing. I'm here, she thought. I'm not running. I'm right here, and in the darkness, something held back. Chapter 6. Moonbliss. At these sounds were worse than Marlowe had imagined. She sat on the floor with her back against the door, hands pressed over her ears, trying to block out the screams echoing from the forest. Because that's what they were, screams. Raw and agonized, barely recognizable as coming from Kael's throat. Between the screams came other sounds, the crack of bones breaking and reforming. Guttural snarls that raised every hair on her body. The thrashing of something massive tearing through underbrush. This is what he didn't want me to see. She thought, tears streaming down her face. This is the violence he lives with every month. The screaming went on for what felt like hours, but was probably closer to 30 minutes. Then, abruptly, it stopped. Silence crashed over the forest like a wave. Marlowe lowered her hands, heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She stood on shaking legs and moved to the window, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. At first, she saw nothing but darkness and trees. Then movement. A massive shape emerged from the tree line. And Marlowe's breath caught. The wolf was even larger than she remembered, easily the size of a small horse, with fur so dark it seemed to absorb the moonlight rather than reflect it. But it was the eyes that held her frozen. Amber and gold and achingly familiar. They found her through the window with laser focus. Kael's eyes. The wolf's eyes. Both and neither. The creature approached slowly, almost cautiously, stopping about 10 feet from the cabin. It sat, massive haunches settling into the snow, and simply watched her. Marlowe pressed her palm against the cold glass. The wolf's head tilted, tracking the movement. Then, deliberately, it moved closer. 5 feet, 3 feet. Close enough that she could see the individual silver hairs mixed into its dark coat. The intelligence burning in those impossible eyes. "Kael," she whispered. The wolf's ears pricked forward at the sound of her voice. Even muffled through the window, Marlowe knew what she'd promised. Knew she was supposed to stay inside, assess from a distance, decide if she could handle this reality. But looking at the wolf, this magnificent, terrifying creature that had carried her bleeding body through the snow, she found she couldn't stay away. She unlocked the door. "Marlowe." No, the words materialized in her head. Not quite voice, not quite thought. The wolf's eyes widened, and it took several quick steps backward, a low whine emanating from its chest. "It's okay," she said, stepping out onto the porch. The cold bit through her borrowed clothes immediately, but she barely noticed. "I'm not afraid." The wolf shook its massive head, backing up further. "You should be. Stay inside. Safe." The fragments of thought came clearer now, and Marlowe realized with a start that she was somehow hearing him. Not words exactly, but intent, emotion, the bond he described made manifest. "I don't want to be inside." She descended the stairs slowly, one hand on the railing. "I want to see you. Really see you. Dangerous." The wolf's body language screamed conflict, every muscle tense to flee, but those golden eyes never left her face. "I could hurt you." The wolf, "I'm not fully. You won't hurt me." Marlowe reached the bottom step. 10 feet of snow-covered ground separated them now. "You didn't hurt me when I was bleeding and helpless. You won't hurt me now. You don't understand. The instincts are stronger like this. The need to claim, to mark, to..." The thought cut off abruptly, and the wolf made a sound low in its chest that was almost a growl. "To what?" The wolf's gaze intensified, and suddenly Marlowe felt it, a pull so strong it was almost physical, drawing her forward. Need and hunger and possessive certainty that sank through the bond between them. The wolf wanted to close the distance, wanted to touch her, scent her, confirm beyond any doubt that she was real and here and his. And the terrifying part was how much she wanted the same thing. "Show me," she said softly, taking another step forward. "Show me you trust me as much as I trust you." The wolf went utterly still. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other across the moonlit snow, woman and beast, human and shifter, two broken pieces that somehow fit together. Then, slowly, the wolf lowered itself to the ground. Not in submission, but in offering, making itself less threatening, more approachable. An act of profound trust from a creature that had learned to trust no one. Marlowe closed the distance between them. Up close, the wolf was even more magnificent. She could see the scars hidden beneath its furrowed wounds that told stories of years alone in the wilderness. Could smell the wild, clean scent of him, stronger now, but fundamentally unchanged. Could feel the heat radiating from its massive body, steam rising from its breath in the cold air. "You're beautiful," she whispered. The wolf made a sound, not quite a whine, not quite a rumble. Its eyes closed briefly, as if her words had struck something deep inside. When they opened again, they were bright with inch tears. "No one has ever." The thought fragmented, too raw to complete. Marlowe understood anyway. No one had ever seen the wolf and called it beautiful. No one had ever looked at this form, the form that had driven his family away, that had condemned him to 12 years of isolation and seen anything but a monster. Slowly, giving him every chance to pull away, she reached out her hand. The wolf's entire body tensed. She could feel the war raging inside him through the bond, the desperate desire for contact warring against years of self-imposed isolation and fear of rejection. His lips pulled back slightly, revealing massive fangs, but not in threat. In uncertainty. "It's okay," Marlowe murmured. "I've got you." She placed her palm against the side of his head. The wolf's eyes slid shut, and a sound escaped him that was almost human, a sob of relief and longing and profound surrender. He leaned into her touch, and Marlowe felt the tremor that ran through his massive frame. The fur was softer than she'd expected, thick and warm beneath her fingers. She could feel his pulse, strong and steady, could feel the barely controlled power in the muscles beneath. This creature could kill her with one swipe of its paw, could tear her apart without effort. Instead, it pressed closer. That massive head now tucked against her chest as if seeking shelter. Marlowe wrapped her arms around him as much as she could, stroking the soft fur behind his ears. The wolf made sounds, broken, desperate sounds that might have been crying if wolves could cry. All the loneliness, all the fear, all the years of being unwanted came pouring out in shuddering breaths against her shoulder. "I see you," she whispered into his fur. "I see you, Kael, and you're not a monster." "You never were." Marlowe, her name in his fractured thoughts. Reverent as a prayer. They stayed like that for a long time, woman and wolf, wrapped together in the moonlight while snow began to fall in soft, silent flakes. Marlowe felt the bond between them solidify into something unbreakable. Felt her own walls crumbling as she let herself feel the depth of his loneliness, his fierce protectiveness, his desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, he'd found someone who could accept all of him eventually. The wolf pulled back, though clearly reluctant. Its eyes searched her face with an intensity that stole her breath. "You're cold." The thought was clearer now, accompanied by concern. "Should go inside. Come with me." The wolf's ears flattened. "Can't. Too big. Might break things." "Might. Then I'm staying out here." "Marlowe, I mean it." She crossed her arms, fighting off a shiver. "Either you come inside or we both freeze." The wolf huffed an almost laugh-like sound. Then, with clear reluctance, it rose to its feet and followed her up the porch steps. It barely fit through the door. Had to duck its head and squeeze its shoulders through, but it managed that inside. The wolf looked comically out of place in the small cabin, too large, too wild, too much for the domestic space. It stood in the center of the room, clearly uncomfortable, unsure where to go or what to do. Marlowe grabbed blankets from the bed and spread them on the floor near the fire. Then she sat down on them and patted the space beside her. "Come here." The wolf approached cautiously, each step deliberate. When it reached her, it lowered itself to the floor, still massive, still overwhelming. But there was something almost vulnerable in the way it positioned itself. Close enough to touch, far enough to retreat if needed. Marlowe leaned against its side, feeling the steady rise and fall of its breathing. The wolf went rigid at first, then slowly relaxed, until its head came to rest on her lap with a gentleness that belied its size. "Tell me something," she said, running her fingers through the thick fur. "Something you've never told anyone." "Why?" "Because I want to know you. All of you. Not just the parts you think are acceptable." The wolf was quiet for a long moment. "Then sometimes I howl at the moon, not because I have to, but because I'm lonely. Because it's the only way I know how to scream that I exist, that I matter, that I'm still here." Marlowe's eyes burned with tears. "You matter to me. You barely know me. I know enough." She stroked the soft fur behind his ears, feeling him lean into the touch. "I know you're brave and kind and desperately trying to protect everyone from yourself. I know you've been alone too long and you're terrified of hoping for something better. I know you saved my life and changed everything. I'm still a monster." "No." Marlowe's voice was firm. "You're a man who becomes a wolf. There's a difference." The wolf lifted its head, those golden eyes boring into hers with an intensity that felt like being seen for the first time in her life. Then, gently, so gently for such a massive creature, it pressed its nose against her forever, came the promise. "If you'll have me forever." Marlowe smiled through her tears. "I think I can manage that." Outside, the moon climbed higher, bathing the world in silver light. Inside, a woman and a wolf lay tangled together by the fire, two lonely souls finally finding home. Chapter 7. Dawn-breaking Marlowe woke to warmth and the sound of a heartbeat that wasn't her own. For a moment, she floated in that space between sleep and waking, aware only of comfort and safety and the solid presence beside her. Then memory returned in a rush. The full moon, the transformation, the Wolf. Her eyes flew open. She was still on the floor by the fire, but the massive Wolf was gone. In its place, Kael lay curled around her, very human and very naked. His arm was draped across her waist, his face buried in her hair, and even in sleep his body curved protectively around hers. Marlowe's breath caught in the soft morning light filtering through the windows. She could see him fully for the first time, the lean, muscular lines of his body, the scars that crisscrossed his skin like a map of violence survived. But it was his face that held her attention. Asleep, he looked younger, the perpetual tension finally smoothed from his features. Vulnerable in a way he never allowed while awake. She should move, should give him privacy, find clothes, do something other than stare. But she couldn't bring herself to break the moment. This is what trust looks like, she thought. He's letting me see him at his most defenseless. Kael's breathing shifted, and she knew he was waking. She felt the exact moment consciousness returned, the way his entire body tensed. The sharp intake of breath as he realized where he was and who he was holding. He started to pull away. "Don't," Marlowe said quietly. "Don't run from this." Kael froze, his arm still across her waist. I need clothes, probably. But not yet." She turned in his arms to face him, keeping her eyes on his face even though she could feel the heat of his bare skin against hers. "Last night happened. We can't pretend it didn't." His eyes were human again, dark brown with just flecks of gold, but they held the same intensity as the Wolf's. "I fell asleep like this. That's never happened before." "What do you mean?" "After I shift back, I usually wake up in the forest, cold and disoriented and alone." His voice was rough with emotion. "But last night, I woke up warm, safe, with you." Marlowe reached up to touch his face, feeling the stubble rough against her palm. "How do you feel?" "Terrified," he admitted. "You saw everything, the worst of me, and you're still here." "I don't know what to do with that. Maybe just accept it?" "It's not that simple." "It could be." Marlowe traced the line of his jaw, feeling him tremble under her touch. "You keep making this more complicated than it needs to be. I saw you, the real you, and I chose to stay. You don't understand what you're choosing. The bond, now that you've accepted it, it's permanent. You'll feel my emotions, sense when I'm in danger. And I'll be." He stopped, jaw clenching. "You'll be what?" "Territorial, possessive. The Wolf won't tolerate other men near you. Won't accept you leaving, even temporarily." His eyes searched hers desperately. "You're giving up your freedom, Marlowe. Your chance at a normal life. I don't want a normal life. Normal got me nowhere." She shifted closer, feeling his sharp intake of breath. "I want this, whatever this is. Complications and all. You say that now. Stop." Marlowe pressed her fingers against his lips, silencing him. "Stop trying to talk me out of this. Stop assuming you know what's best for me. I'm a grown woman making a choice. Respect it." Kael stared at her, and slowly the panic in his eyes shifted to something else. Wonder, hope, and underneath, a hunger so intense it made her shiver. "You're sure?" His voice was barely a whisper. "I'm sure." Something broke in his expression, the last wall crumbling. Then his hand came up to cup her face with a gentleness that belied his strength, and he kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and hungry, and 12 years of loneliness poured into a single point of contact. Marlowe gasped against his mouth, and Kael took advantage, deepening the kiss until she forgot where she ended and he began. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kael pressed his forehead against hers. "Mine," he breathed. "Say it. I need to hear you say it." "Yours," Marlowe whispered back. "And you're mine." The sound he made was almost a growl. "Completely, irrevocably, forever." That's a long time. Not long enough. His thumb stroked across her cheekbone. "I've been alone so long, I forgot what it felt like to be wanted. To be seen, I see you. Marlowe met his gaze steadily. Every part of you. Man and wolf. And I'm not going anywhere. Kael kissed her again, softer this time, but no less intense. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright. I should get dressed. Make breakfast. Try to remember how to be human around you, or Marlowe said, surprising herself with her boldness. You could stay right here a little longer. If I stay here any longer. I'm going to, he stopped, closing his eyes as if fighting for control. You're still healing. And I've been alone too long to trust myself to be gentle. I'm not asking for gentle. His eyes snapped open, gold bleeding into the brown. Don't say things like that. The wolf is still close to the surface after a shift. Good. Marlowe ran her hand down his chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart. I like the wolf. Kael caught her hand, his grip firm but careful. Marlowe, I need you to understand something. When he struggled with the words. It won't just be physical. The bond will complete. You'll be marked as mine on a level humans don't understand. Other shifters will sense it. And there's no going back. Why would I want to go back? Because you don't know what you're agreeing to. The words burst out of him, frustrated and afraid. You don't know about pack politics, about territories, about the violence that comes with this world. You don't know that I'll have to fight to keep you if another alpha challenges. You don't know. You're right. Marlowe sat up, holding the blanket to her chest. I don't know any of that. But I know you. And I know that I was dying in the snow a week ago, convinced my life was over. Then you saved me. You gave me a reason to keep breathing. That's gratitude. It's not just gratitude. She grabbed his face with both hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. I'm falling for you, Kael. Maybe I already have. And that terrifies me more than any wolf or pack politics or territorial nonsense. Because I've already had my heart broken once, and I swore I'd never let anyone that close again. The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Kael stared at her like she'd just handed him the world. You're falling for me, he repeated. Voice hoarse. Apparently I have terrible taste in men. That startled a laugh out of him, real and unguarded. Terrible doesn't even begin to cover it. So what do we do about it? Kael was quiet for a moment, studying her face like he was memorizing every detail. Then, slowly, he smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. It transformed his entire face, making him look years younger. We take it slow, he said. Give you time to heal completely. Time to understand what you're really choosing. His hand found hers, lacing their fingers together. And I court you properly. The way you deserve. Court me? Marlowe raised an eyebrow. What century are you from? The wolf is traditional about these things. Simi, his thumb stroked across her knuckles. Besides, you've been hurt enough. Someone should treat you like you matter. Like you're precious. The words made her throat tight. I'm not precious. You are to me. Kael lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her palm. You're everything to me. And I'm going to make sure you know it. Marlowe felt tears prick her eyes. After years of being taken for granted, of making herself small to fit into someone else's life, having someone look at her like she hung the moon was overwhelming. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. The last relationship I was in wasn't a relationship. It was you giving everything and getting nothing back. Kael's voice was firm. This will be different. I promise. How can you be sure? Because I've spent 12 years learning what loneliness feels like. I'm not wasting a single moment I get with you. He stood finally and reached for his discarded clothes from the night before. Now, I'm going to get dressed and make you breakfast. Then we're going to talk about what happens next. What does happen next? Kael pulled on his pants, then turned to face her. That depends on you. You can stay here with me, learn about this world, see if this is really what you want. Or he paused, and she saw how much the next words cost him. Or I can take you back to town, help you rebuild your life. We'll find a way to manage the bond from a distance. You'd let me go? If that's what you needed, yes. His eyes met hers, steady despite the pain in them. I won't cage you, Marlowe. Not ever. Your choice matters more than my wants. Marlowe stood as well, wrapping the blanket around herself. She crossed to him, rising on her toes to press a soft kiss to his lips. I choose you, she said simply. I choose this. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Kael's arms came around her, holding her close. Together, he echoed, and it sounded like a vow. Outside, the sun climbed higher, burning away the last shadows of night. Inside, two souls intertwined, building something new from the ashes of their broken pasts. The future was uncertain. Dangerous, even, but for the first time in years, Marlowe wasn't afraid. Chapter 8. Shadows at the edge of 3 days passed in a haze of quiet domesticity that felt like learning to breathe again. Marlowe discovered that Kael was surprisingly domestic when he allowed himself to be. He cooked meals with the precision of someone who'd spent years perfecting survival skills, taught her which plants in the forest were edible and which would kill her, and read to her in the evenings from his collection of worn poetry books, his voice turning the words into something sacred. But she also noticed the things he didn't say. The way he'd pause sometimes, head tilted like he was listening to something she couldn't hear. The tension that crept into his shoulders whenever she mentioned going outside alone. The protective way he positioned himself between her and the door, even in sleep. On the 4th morning, Marlowe woke to find him standing at the window, body rigid with tension. What's wrong? She asked, sitting up. We have visitors. His voice was flat, carefully controlled. 3 wolves. They've been circling the territory since dawn. Marlowe's heart kicked. Other shifters. Yes, Kael turned to face her, and his eyes were more gold than brown. From the Shadowpine Pack, they control most of the mountain territories north of here. What do they want? To investigate, he moved to the small closet, pulling out clothes with sharp, efficient movements. A new scent appeared in these woods. Yours. Female human, bonded to a lone wolf. They want to know if I'm a threat to their territory. Are you? Not unless they make me one. Kael pulled a shirt over his head, his movements tense. Pack politics are ... complicated. Lone wolves like me exist on sufferance. We're allowed our territory as long as we don't cause problems or attract attention. And I'm attention. You're human bonded to a shifter without pack protection. In their eyes, you're vulnerable. A liability. His jaw clenched. Or an opportunity. Fear coiled in Marlowe's stomach. What kind of opportunity? The kind where they offer me a place in their pack in exchange for control over you. Kael's voice turned cold. Some alphas collect human mates like trophies. Proof of their power. That's barbaric. That's pack law. He crossed to her, cupping her face in his hands. Listen to me carefully. When they arrive and they will arrive, you stay inside. You don't speak to them, don't look them in the eye. Don't do anything that could be interpreted as a challenge. I'm not afraid of. I need you to be afraid. His grip tightened slightly, urgency bleeding into his tone. These aren't pets, Marlowe. They're alphas. Dominant males who fought and killed to maintain their position. If they perceive you as disrespectful or see you as unclaimed, I'll have to fight them. And 3 against 1. I might not win. The words chilled her. She'd gotten so comfortable in their isolated bubble, she'd forgotten there was an entire world of supernatural politics she knew nothing about. What do I do? She asked. You stay here. Stay quiet. Let me handle this. He pressed his forehead to hers, breathing her in. And if things go wrong, if you hear fighting, you run. There's a path behind the cabin that leads to the main road. Follow it and don't look back. I'm not leaving you, promise me. His eyes blazed with desperate intensity. If I tell you to run, you run. Please, Marlowe. I can't protect you if I'm worried about you getting hurt. She wanted to argue, to insist she could help somehow. But the fear in his voice, fear for her, not himself, made her nod. I promise. Kael kissed her, hard and claiming, like he was branding the memory of her into his skin. When he pulled back, his eyes had gone fully gold. Stay away from the windows, he said. Then he was gone, slipping out the door and closing it firmly behind him. Marlowe moved to the window despite his warning, unable to stop herself. Through the trees, she could see three massive shapes approaching, wolves even larger than Kael's form, moving with the coordinated precision of practiced hunters. They stopped at the edge of the clearing. Kael walked out to meet them, shoulders back, head high. Even in human form, there was something undeniably wolfish about his posture, territorial and defiant. One of the wolves shifted. The transformation was faster than Kael's had been, bones cracking and reforming in a matter of seconds. When it was done, a man stood in the snow. He was older than Kael, maybe mid-40s, with silver streaking through his dark hair and scars that marked him as a veteran of countless fights. Marlowe couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could read the body language. The alpha, because he had to be an alpha, radiating authority even from this distance, was speaking. Kael's posture remained rigid, defensive. Then the alpha gestured toward the cabin. Toward her, Kael's response was immediate and violent. He stepped forward, putting himself between the alpha and the cabin, his entire body screaming challenge. The two other wolves rose to their feet, hackles raised. Oh God, Marlowe thought. This is going to turn into a fight. But the alpha held up a hand, and the wolves subsided. He said something else longer this time, more measured. Kael's shoulders remained tense, but he didn't move. The conversation continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. At one point, Kael turned to look at the cabin, and even from this distance, Marlowe could see the conflict on his face. Finally, the alpha nodded. He shifted back into wolf form in a blur of movement, and all three wolves turned and melted back into the forest. Kael stood in the clearing for a long moment, staring after them. Then his shoulders slumped, and he walked back to the cabin like a man heading for execution. Marlowe met him at the door. What happened? What did they want? Kael didn't answer immediately. He moved past her, pacing the small space like a caged animal. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. They're giving me a choice. Join the pack, accept their protection and their laws, or stay independent and face the consequences when other packs come calling. What consequences? Eventually, someone will challenge me for you. Someone stronger, with pack backing. And I'll lose. He turned to face her, eyes haunted. The alpha, his name is Marcus, is offering us a way out, safety, a community. But it comes with conditions. What kind of conditions? I'd have to submit to pack hierarchy, follow their alpha, accept challenges from other pack members to establish my rank. His hands clenched into fists. And you'd be under pack protection, which means you'd be subject to pack law. No longer just my mate, but a pack member with responsibilities and restrictions. Marlowe tried to process this. Would I have to become like you? No, humans can't be turned, that's myth. But you'd be bound to the pack through me. Your choices would affect my standing. Your safety would be everyone's concern. He laughed bitterly. You trade one cage for another. How long do we have to decide? Until the next full moon. 1 month. Kael crossed to her, taking her hands in his. I'm sorry. I thought I could keep us hidden here, keep you safe from all of this. But they found us anyway. This isn't your fault, isn't it? I knew the risks. Knew that bonding with a human would draw attention. But I was selfish. I wanted you too much to walk away. Marlowe squeezed his hands. I'm glad you are selfish. I'm glad you didn't walk away, even knowing what it's cost you. What has it cost me? A life I hated. A future that was slowly suffocating me. She pulled him closer. You gave me freedom, Kael. Real freedom. The choice to be myself, monsters and all. He cupped her face, thumbs stroking her cheekbones. We don't have to decide today. We have time to think about it, weigh our options. What do you want to do? Kael's expression turned conflicted. Part of me wants to keep running. Find somewhere even more remote, somewhere they'll never find us. But the rational part knows that's impossible. Eventually, we'd be found. And without pack protection, you'd be vulnerable to every shifter who decided you were worth taking. And the other option, joining the pack. I'd have you. We'd be together, protected. But I'd lose the freedom I've fought for 12 years to maintain. I'd have to answer to an alpha, follow rules I don't agree with, watch you navigate a world of supernatural politics you never asked for. Marlowe was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then, tell me about Marcus. What's he like? Fair, from what I've heard. His pack has a reputation for being progressive. They allow humans, don't enforce the old breeding laws, protect lone wolves in their territory instead of driving them out. Kael's jaw tightened. But he's still an alpha, still someone who could order me to do things I don't want to do. And if I refuse, there are consequences. What kind of consequences? Exile or death, depending on the offense. The casual way he said it made Marlowe's blood run cold. That's not a choice. That's tyranny. That's pack law. Survival requires hierarchy, and hierarchy requires absolute authority. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close. I won't let them hurt you. No matter what we decide, that's a promise. Marlowe pressed her face into his chest, breathing in his familiar scent. We'll figure it out, together, he echoed. But even as they held each other, Marlowe couldn't shake the feeling that their peaceful isolation was ending. The outside world had found them, and it was demanding answers they weren't ready to give. That night, Kael held her tighter than usual, and Marlowe pretended not to notice the way he kept watching the windows, pretended not to hear the howls in the distance, closer than they'd been before, pretended that everything was going to be okay. But deep down, she knew their troubles were just beginning.